Touchdown, Alabama, let's get it.
The process, no one can stop this. Hottest show in the streets, I bet you can't top this. Rammer, jammer, yellow hammer, come see how we rock this. Alabama fans the best, there's no way you can top this. Recruiting news and interviews, just sit back and watch this.
Recruiting news and interviews, just sit back and watch this.
The process.
Welcome into The Process, Crimson Tide Recruiting. I am your host, Justin Smith, the scouting and recruiting analyst for Touchdown Alabama Magazine. This is Tuesday's show, the first show of the week. Be sure to hit that subscribe button below if you're not subscribed to Touchdown Alabama's YouTube page. Also, be sure to leave a like whether you are subscribed or not. I am here every Tuesday and Thursday evening to break down the latest in Tide football recruiting news. And on today's show, I want to talk about the recruitment, give an early preview or just the latest on Terrion Arnold, the 4-star defensive back out of Tallahassee, Florida, who is one of the Tide's top remaining targets in the 2021 recruiting class ahead of the traditional signing period, which will be on February 3rd. It will begin on February 3rd on National Signing Day. So I want to talk about him. And I also want to touch on another coaching change when it comes to the Crimson Tide, losing their running back coach Charles Huff to Marshall as he accepted the head coaching job at Marshall University. So I will talk about that. And I'll also talk about Arnold. But before I dive deeper into that, I do have a couple of recruiting updates to hit you guys with today. So with that being said, let's get the process. I have a few recruiting updates to get into today. First, starting with a couple of the Tide's 2021 signees. Quincy McKinstry, the Tide's 5-star athlete signee out of Pinson Valley High School in Pinson, Alabama, won the Mr. Football Award for the state of Alabama recently after he put together a remarkable senior season for Pinson Valley. He finished the season with 12 pass breakups, 2 interceptions, which were took back for touchdowns. He also recorded 11 receiving touchdowns during his senior season for the Indians. So congratulations goes out to the Tide's 2021 5-star athlete signee, Quincy McKinstry, who is actually already enrolled at the University of Alabama and is currently taking classes. Another Tide signee who came up big recently was Jojo Earl, the 4-star wide receiver out of Aledo High School in Texas. He helped Aledo secure its 10th state championship in school history with a 200 all-purpose yard performance. He accounted for 91 of those yards on the ground, and the rest of those yards came in the air as he was actually able to pull in 1 touchdown reception in that performance. So a huge congratulations goes out to the Tide's 2021 4-star wide receiver signing Jojo Earl as well. 2022 prospects are continuing to drop top schools list, as we will constantly see over the next couple of months or so throughout the offseason. The guy who recently dropped one was Zion Branch, a 4-star athlete out of Las Vegas, Nevada, who currently attends Bishop Gorman High School. He released a top 11 and included the Crimson Tide. We are going to wrap up this segment of recruiting updates with the Tide's 2022 defensive back target out of Oxford High School in Oxford, Alabama. Terrion Arnold actually dropped a top 10 recently. I got a chance to catch up with them today actually just to talk about the latest in his recruitment. He actually has a commitment time frame in mind, but he currently feels that there's one SEC school that's not named Alabama who is showing him a lot of love at the moment. So check out the latest on Terrion Arnold over at touchdowналabama.com. That is a subscriber only article, so be sure to pick up your subscription to touchdowналabama.com today. But as I said at the top of the show, I just wanted to provide the latest on 4-star defensive back Terrion Arnold out of Tallahassee, Florida, and also talk a little bit about Charles Huff and the impact that he had on the Tide's recruiting effort during his time in Tuscaloosa. Well, let's dive right into the latest in Terrion Arnold's recruitment. Arnold is a 4-star defensive back out of Tallahassee, Florida. He is now to Alabama, Florida, and Georgia, and he is set to announce his commitment and sign with the school of his choice on February 3rd. I actually had an opportunity to catch up with Arnold recently, and one thing really stood out about our conversation, and that was the way that the Tide's basketball coaching staff is currently recruiting him. He told me that they are in daily contact with him, which shows me that this is a team effort between the Tides basketball coaching staff and the Tides football staff. Of course, Nick Saban and the Tides football staff has been very involved in Arnold's recruitment for a couple of years, basically now. Nick Saban has played a huge role in just looking at the way the Tide has pitched themselves to Arnold. They constantly compare him to some of their former great defensive backs, constantly bringing up a fellow Tallahassee native in Rennie Harrison, and also talking about Minkah Fitzpatrick and talking about the impact he can have at defensive back at the University of Alabama, and also go on and play in the NFL as a defensive back. Just looking at Rennie Harrison, Minkah Fitzpatrick, and the other defensive backs who have came from the University of Alabama. So the Tides coaching staff, the Tides football coaching staff, recruitment pitch has been pretty solid, has been pretty much the same, just saying that we really want you to come to Tuscaloosa. We have a scholarship for you. We believe you could be one of the all-time great defensive backs in Tuscaloosa if you choose to sign with us. That has been the Tides football coaching staff's pitch throughout his recruitment. But moving over to basketball, as I will play a couple of Terrion Arnold's basketball highlights, he seems to feel that the Tides basketball coaching staff also has a plan for him to play both sports, a plan in terms of how to use him. Just looking at his highlights, you can tell that he's a kid that likes to hustle. And just looking at the way Nate Oates plays, is a blue-collar basketball style, as he likes to call it, hard-nosed type of hustle plays. He really likes to see his players do that. Just looking at Herb Jones, for example, and just looking at Terrion Arnold, he would most likely be a point guard at the Division I basketball level, but this is a kid with some great athleticism, plays with a lot of quickness on the hardwood. So you can see why Nate Oates and the Tides basketball coaching staff is trying to get Arnold to Tuscaloosa for him to join their squad. And just looking at that potentially coming to fruition, Arnold is a kid that will not take up a basketball scholarship. He will be on a football scholarship, most likely. So you'll get a kid who could possibly be a D1 basketball player without playing football, and you get him without him wasting a basketball scholarship. So he will basically be like a walk-on who can really play. So Terrion Arnold, it looks as if the Tides basketball and football staff are working together to close on him. It could be the X factor in Arnold's recruitment when it comes to the Crimson Tide, because just looking at the way Nate Oates and Alabama basketball is currently playing, they are undefeated in the SEC. They take a lot of threes. They play an NBA style, sort of. So I think that is pretty attractive to any recruit, any player who is looking at the Tide basketball team and basketball staff in general. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out and how that factors into Arnold's decision heading into his decision during the traditional signing period on February 3rd. Something that is pretty interesting and something that I am excited to see if it would come to fruition is that the Tide will have two players who are playing both football and basketball. Just looking at Terrion Arnold and JaQuincy McKinstry, who is actually going to do that as well. McKinstry is signed, as I said earlier, and is currently on campus taking classes. And just looking at the future down the road in the 2022 recruiting class, there is another guy who could do this as well. Looking at Antonio Kite, the athlete out of Anniston High School in Anniston, Alabama. Something that is interesting, something that makes him different from Terrion and JaQuincy, is that Antonio actually got a basketball offer from the Crimson Tide first. They offered him basketball when he was in 9th grade. He actually played football for the first time this past season, and the Tide offered him, along with a couple of other Power 5 programs, as a defensive back, as he showed some great instincts for it to be his first year ever playing high school football. He did play some middle school football, but he got uninterested, and he put football aside and focused on basketball, collected a couple of D1 basketball scholarships, and moved back to football during his junior season, and has reeled in some Division I football offers. So that is just an interesting trend, an interesting development when it comes to the Tide recruiting. But moving over now to the Tide losing their running back coach, Charles Huff, who has been huge for the Crimson Tide during the 2021 recruiting class. Just looking at him helping the Tide pull in multiple 5-star recruits in J.C. Latham, Dallas Turner, Ja'Cory Brooks, and also looking at Damon Payne, the 5-star defensive tackle out of Michigan. So he has been a great instrumental part of the Tide's push for 2021 recruits, and I think they're going to miss him on the recruiting trail, especially with the way he is able to connect with recruits. Just looking at him being a young coach at 37 years old, I think that is something that's really going to benefit him at Marshall University as their head football coach. So I am excited to see what Coach Huff does throughout the rest of his college career. But looking at the Crimson Tide, of course, they want to add a new running back coach. Now they want to continue cranking out high-profile running backs for the NFL who are able to produce in Tuscaloosa. So I think they're going to have to get I think they'll benefit from having a younger running back coach, a guy who can connect with recruits on the recruiting trail, and a guy who can help their running backs produce in Tuscaloosa. As I said, helping guys to gain confidence and helping them just, I guess, critique their game, the smaller parts of their game, turn them from good to great. So they would definitely need a guy who can get it done on the field. But I think they could really benefit from getting another younger coach like Charles Huff, who has some experience like Charles Huff did coming to Tuscaloosa as well. So that's what I wanted to talk about today, the impact of Charles Huff, who was a great recruiter for the Crimson Tide during his time in Tuscaloosa, especially what he was able to do in the 2021 recruiting class. Also updating Arnold's recruitment, with him set to make his official decision on February 3rd. It looks as if the Tides basketball coaching staff is involved with the Tides football staff, working together to close on one of the top prospects in the 2021 recruiting class that could be the X factor when it comes to Arnold possibly choosing the Tide down the line. That will put a bow on this episode of The Process. Be sure to hit that like button. Also be sure to hit that subscribe button before you leave as well. Then head over to touchdowналabama.com. Pick up your subscription today. With that subscription, you will be able to read all of our subscriber-only articles. Get your hands on a yearly print magazine issue. Get an opportunity to read our in-depth scouting reports on each Tide commit in each recruiting class. Also read our in-depth draft projections for the Tide players who are eligible to declare for the NFL draft. Then head to the Google Play Store if you have an Android device, or head to the Apple App Store if you have an Apple device to download the Touchdown Alabama app. With that app, you can get breaking news notifications sent to your mobile device. As always, I am Justin Smith, the scouting and recruiting analyst for Touchdown Alabama magazine.
Process.